Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Careers in a Crunch. I'm Arti, and today I'm joined by Diana Arevalo. I'm super excited to have her on my podcast and hear about her professional journey. So, once again, I want to thank you for being here. I'm super excited.
Thank you for having me. It's a real honor.
All right, so I guess we can just get started with a few questions. So,
Mhm.
first is what did you major in, and how did that have an impact on your career, if it did at all?
So I went to medical school in Colombia, and in Colombia, our education system is different. We don't have college. So once you graduate high school, you go straight into the school of whatever profession you choose. So I went straight from my high school into medical school. So there was no other alternative. Once you start your school, then that's it, you finished.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I think that's like really obviously really different from um here in like the States. So I think that's really cool. And I guess that sort of leads into my next question, which is kind of what first inspired you to have a career in medicine? And was there kind of a particular moment when you realized that this was like the path you wanted to pursue?
I honestly cannot remember when I started becoming interested in medicine. I remember I used to play with my stuffed pets, and I would take a knife and open them up and take the stuffing out and put it back in and play that I was doing surgery on them. And that's how my love for medicine, I guess, began. And then as I grew older, I was really interested in like biology. It just came kind of like easy to me. It was kind of logical. I remember at one point I was like thinking, how do people just go around their life not knowing how their body works? That to me was very interesting. And then also the fact that I could help people was always very, very interesting to me, like how you can reach out to so many different people and, be there for them when needed. So that was what kind of made me decide that I did want to do that.
Yeah, I think that is so interesting, and I love how you still remember how, I guess, when you were a little kid, that's something that you did, and I think that's cool because I guess it definitely kind of ties into like this whole like idea of like medicine, and it's definitely, I guess, when you were like cutting your stuffed animals open, I think that's so cool, and kind of how you kind of had the question of like, how do people not know how their bodies work, and so how that kind of led you to where you are right now, and I think that's so cool.
Mhm.
Did you ever have doubts about your path or consider doing something different?
I did. I did, because when you're a kid, right? Like there's so many different options and there's so many things that you might like. So I also considered going to law school. I thought that was it's a very different way of maybe achieving the same goal that I had, that was working with people and trying to help people when they were in need. Um, but I understood that when you go to law school, you have to do a lot of reading. And I honestly was not very much into that. So I was like, no, I can't do that. And then another option that I considered was doing something with like international affairs or something like that related, because at the time that I was finishing my high school, I was actually fluent in 5 languages. So, and I loved learning new languages and all that kind of like international feeling. So I did think that maybe I could do like international affairs or international business or something like that. But it was not my passion. So finally, it was medicine, and I started that.
Yeah, I think that's so cool because you kind of like you were saying, there's a lot of different approaches to kind of getting to a career where you're involved with people and you're helping people. So obviously, law and medicine are sort of two completely different types of careers, but I think it's cool how you kind of had this more like broad idea and then sort of like narrowed it down based off of like that kind of like idea. And I think also how you were fluent in five languages is amazing. That's
That was
awesome.
very nice, but but I thought I could use those languages also in my medical practice,
Yeah.
right? So there's not only one way for you to follow. You can just include everything that you like in one path.
Yeah. Um, what part of your job did you find most exciting and what part is the most challenging?
The most exciting part for me is really getting to know so many different people. You know, the type of medicine that I practice, I'm a primary care physician. So I have long standing relationships with my patients. So I get to really know them well. And that to me is very, very exciting. They become part of my family, I become part of their family. Um, and, I've met people from almost, I would say, I've met people from every continent. I've met people from almost every country around the world, I would say. Um, so I love the fact that I get to know about different cultures and different traditions and different values, but at the same time, we're all the same type of human, right? So that I find very exciting about my work. The most challenging part is, I would say, the system that rules the delivery of medicine, of medical care. Um, because obviously that is outside of my control. And e- even though I cannot control it, I have to play by those rules. So it makes my goal of helping people more complicated. So the challenge is, how do I try to help people the best that I can with the limitations that the system uh, sets? So
Hmm.
that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think in regard to the most exciting part, I think it's great because um I think specifically in like or there's a lot of careers, but like in the medical field, I think, and then specifically, I think your role, you get to kind of create these long-standing relationships with patients,
Hmm.
and I think that's something so amazing about your career is that you kind of get to know patients on a different level, and kind of like you were saying, get to know their values and their kind of beliefs and their culture, which I think is super cool. But obviously, like you were saying, there are challenges, in regard to like kind of like the set rules already that you have to abide by. So yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and then we were talking about this. So you earned your medical degree in Colombia before you continued your career in the US. And so kind of what was that transition like?
So it was long and difficult and complicated. Um, there's a specific agency from the federal government that sets the rules by which foreign medical doctors can get to come to the states. um, you have to make sure that all your credentials are on par with the credentials that an American doctor would have.
Hmm.
And you have to prove that you speak the language, that a lot of um, requirements. So it did take me about 3 years to do all of that. And then I finally managed to come here. And obviously the system was very different. The way, medical care is provided. Um, I I come from a country, and specifically the hospital that I trained at was very, very poor. Resources were extremely limited. So I remember one of my first shocks was to see how much, in my mind, waste there was in the medical care here. And I would feel bad every time they would throw away like a pair of scissors or a long suture. Um, So that I remember was a huge shock for me. But then, I got trained here, and I learned the ways. And then one day I realized that saving all those scissors was not going to lead me to anywhere, so I threw them away. And yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
decided to continue here.
that's amazing. And like, I think you were saying it was definitely 3 years. That's like quite a long time. So I think obviously there was a lot of steps and there's probably a lot of challenges and setbacks that were probably you came across. But I think it's so cool, like kind of that journey itself as like a part of the whole is really amazing, and it's definitely what makes, someone's journey like really special. So I think that's great.
Yep, it
Um,
was all worth it.
yes. And then, so there are many, many different types of or like specialties in medicine. So, kind of
Mhm.
what made internal medicine the one that felt right for you?
So it's funny because when I started medical school, as I said before, I want to be a surgeon, right? That was my dream. And when I got to start doing internal medicine, because internal medicine is really like the basis of all medicine. And so you do that before you move on to the surgical specialties. But when I started doing internal medicine, I realized that I loved the fact that it was like a private detective. You take your clues, you put them together, you try to find the reason for everything, you have to try to explain how everything is happening. And that was really what I thought was the most exciting part. And by the time that I finished my rotation through internal medicine, I was like, I don't want to do surgery. I don't like that. I rather do this. And ever since I was um set on being an internal medicine doctor.
Yeah, I love the analogy you used about how it was kind of like being a detective. I think that's so interesting. But yeah, I think that's definitely, I think it's super cool. Like you were saying, you kind of get to kind of have all these like different clues about kind of like the people that you're working with. And obviously, like you were saying earlier as well, you kind of get to build connections with your patients too. And that's kind of what makes, I guess,
And
yeah.
that's exactly, the more you know your patient, the more you listen, the more time you spend with them, the more clues you have, right? it's
Yeah.
not it's not like you come in, you take a look at the room and you're like, oh, this was the killer.
Mhm.
No, you have to spend time. And
Yeah.
you know so because that part, was also what I was interested in, spending time with people and getting to know them.
Mhm.
So it fitted right there where into what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that's great. And like, yeah, as I was saying, I think it's like how you kind of get to have that connection. And like you were saying, you build kind of that relationship, more clues, and then you kind of, I guess it leads you to whatever the solution and things like that, and how that kind of makes internal medicine kind of different and special from other fields.
Hmm.
Um, and so you started your own practice with um, a couple other doctors as well. So what was that
Hmm.
kind of like when you decided to do that?
So, mm, like I was explaining to you, one of the biggest challenges is really the system. And the way the system became was not conducive to me working in the way that I love to work, which was spending time with people, getting to know them, um, creating a good relationship with them. Why? Because in today's world of what some of us have begun to call the corporate medicine, um, time is of the essence, and it's a commodity that unfortunately as doctors don't have too much of. So after working a few years under that system, my colleagues and I decided that we wanted to do things differently, and we wanted to do things the way that we thought was necessary, which was not having rushed appointments, and having the time and the accessibility to give our patients, the opportunity to build those relationships. So that's why we decided, we're gonna quit from this group and we're gonna open our own practice, where we hope to do things the way that we like to do them. And it's been very challenging, and it's been a huge learning curve, because obviously we were never trained on anything business or anything like that. um, but I always say, when you love what you do, and you do the best you can, then it tends to work out. So we are very happy that we can practice medicine the way that we like to practice medicine, and
Mhm.
our patients are usually very, very satisfied and very happy to see us. So that's made it all worth it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you were kind of talking about how you kind of had the goal, right? You knew that what you wanted to have was kind of different than what you were kind of, I guess, almost like stuck in
Hmm.
your previous job. And so how you and your colleagues had a set goal. And like you were saying, when you're truly passionate about something, I think it's easy and you enjoy kind of the journey and kind of getting to where you want to be. So I think it's really great how you had that goal and you guys worked and kind of it, you ended up exactly where you wanted to be.
Hmm.
Um, so what skills would you say are most important for somebody interested in this field?
So, in general, the beauty of medicine is that whatever skills you have, you can translate them into some field of medical practice. So if you're like into people and talking, you can be a pediatrician or an internal medicine doctor, or you can be like a psychiatrist. If you like, you know, more like hands-on work, you can be an orthopedist, you can be a surgeon. If you're more like into art or so, you can be like a plastic surgeon. Sorry. You so if you don't like talking to people and you just want to, like, be by yourself, you can either be a radiologist or you can be a pathologist. So whatever skills you have, you can always find a practice in medicine that you can apply them into. So in particular, for internal medicine, to be a primary care doctor, I think that the most important skill is that you have to be willing to listen to people, because I always say my patients will give me their diagnosis. So if you don't want to sit there and listen, then you're not going to do a very good job.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, like you were saying, kind of the communication, people's aspect of your job is something that makes it, I guess, more unique. And like you were saying, each kind of field in medicine has like different skill sets that,
Hmm.
one must have. And I think for yours, like we were talking, I think a common theme in a lot of these questions has sort of been the idea of kind of that patient doctor relationship. And so I
Hmm.
think kind of like you were saying, yeah, the idea of you have to be patient and you have to like want to be there and you have to want to learn and listen. So yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. Because nobody can force you to do that, right? And if you
Exactly.
don't truly enjoy it, then you're not gonna be able to do a good job. That's
Yeah.
not something that you can fake. That's not something that you can just like,
Mhm.
whatever, it's my job. Let me
Yeah.
do it. Mm-mm. Yeah.
Yeah. And going into advice, if you could go back
Hmm.
and give your high school self, one piece of advice, what would it be?
So I'll go back and I'll tell you a funny story. I always so there are a lot of tests to be taken when you choose this path. Um, And I always believed that tests are not to be taken seriously. And I realized along the way that you should. take them seriously, that you should take every opportunity that is given to you to help your performance and your career advance. So in that sense of ideas, and to speak more concretely, so I never took any additional courses or classes or anything like that, because I always said, like, tests are to show that you know what you're talking about, and that was not okay. So I think if I had taken that more seriously, along my career, I could have probably gotten a little bit farther. Um, in the sense of the results, I mean, I love what I do, so probably it wouldn't have maybe mattered too much, but you feel better about yourself, I think.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice. Do go the extra mile, do go for the little harder road,
Hmm.
if you have to.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And like you were saying about uh putting in the work kind of could um give you a better result, and kind of always, kind of pushing yourself to the max is always going to be
Exactly.
important.
Hmm.
And then going into my last question, which is what advice would you give to high school students who are still unsure about what they want to do?
What I think is that you should always try to find what you're passionate about. You know, there's so many different careers out there and paths to follow, but whatever you do, you should really have passion for it,
Hmm.
because work is going to be the biggest part of your life. You spend 8 hours a day or more at work. That's more than the time that you spend with your family or with your friends, whatever. And in order for that life to be meaningful and satisfying, you have to love what you're doing.
Hmm.
And it's great if that passion comes along with money, but don't just look for the money with no passion, because
Yes.
money is never gonna buy you happiness.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the most important thing. When you love what you do, like I said before, and you work hard, you're going to make it. Money is going to follow. You could be in whatever field you want. If you're the best at what you do because you put your into it, you're going to make money,
Yeah.
not the other way around. So I always tell kids, try to find what is it that you like, that you love, that
Hmm.
makes your heart beat faster,
Yeah.
and follow that.
Yeah, I think that is a wonderful piece of advice. I think obviously there's, like you were saying, there are so many careers, so it can definitely be overwhelming. I think especially in kind of the high school, maybe some people are like, "Oh, I already know what to want to
Mm.
do," and then others are, "I have no clue." So I think it can definitely be overwhelming, but like you were saying, like sort of now is the time to, I guess, kind of find that passion. And like you were saying, you can always jump at any opportunity because, it could show you what you want to do. And like you were saying, yeah, definitely finding something that you're passionate about, I think is something that a lot of high school students would benefit from hearing that because, you know, I think it's important not to do it like you were saying just for the money because you're going to be spending all your time working. So doing something that you love is obviously the number one most important thing.
And sometimes it might be a little bit difficult to find your passion. That's the thing. But you could just think on a daily basis, what is it that I enjoy the most? What is it
Hmm.
that if I have free time, I gravitate towards that,
Yeah.
right? And then you try to find a field where you can apply those skills, because we're all born with a certain talent.
Yes.
And the clue is, find your talent and put it to work, and then you'll be just fine.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. This was amazing. I learned so much, and I know that everybody watching will too. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Artie, for having me. This was a real pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, this was awesome, and your journey is wonderful and super inspiring. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. That's it for this episode of Careers in a Crunch. If you found today's conversation helpful and informative, be sure to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an interview. Thanks. Bye.